welcome, Virginia, to the second Aforza headquarters, known as BrewDog. Yeah.
It's true. I think I've only met you here, by the way.
That's not by accident. Virginia Matassa, thanks so much for joining us for the podcast today. We really appreciate you doing this. Maybe to get started, we could just tell everybody a little bit about your role and what you do.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me say thank you for having me. So I'm really privileged to be here, and it's really looking forward to this. So what do I do? Who am I and where do I come from? So I'm Virginia Matassa. I work at Salesforce, and I'm VP of ISV for International, and that's Asia Pacific and EMEA. What does that mean? That means that I have the absolute privilege, because I love my job, to run ISV sales, and that means that we work with entrepreneurs. So we recruit entrepreneurs, we help them build applications, and then we help them to go to market and be successful globally, wherever that is. And it's all done through our ecosystem, and it's all done on a place called the App Exchange, which is a marketplace for enterprises.
Virginia, so you're leading the ISV App Exchange internationally. Not everyone's going to be familiar with just how big it is. Could you give us some stats, please, to give a sense of the size of it all?
So it's one of the largest enterprise marketplaces, and that it means that there's about 3,000 applications on the App Exchange. But not only that, there's about 10 million installs, and what that means is organizations and individuals downloading applications from the App Exchange.
And beyond the App Exchange itself, how big is the Salesforce ecosystem now, just in terms of the economy of it all?
Yeah, so we talk about the Salesforce economy, and that is all of our partners, ISVs and SIs, come together. And by 2026, we expect there to be 9 million jobs in our ecosystem, and 1.6 trillion in dollars, that will generate. So whatever we generate, it will multiply for our partners.
Incredible. Yeah. So it's kind of a B2B enterprise software market, so it might not be necessarily familiar to people who use, Apple App Store or something like that.
But it's that for businesses, right? So it's exactly that. So if you have invested in your CRM system and you've invested in this platform and it's running these parts of your business, and you're like, okay, I need to do this specific thing. Or if I'm in a micro vertical like yourselves, right? Aforza is a great example of this, it's like this great technology, but I just need someone that knows my industry. I need something very specific to me. I don't want to build it from scratch. Who do I go to, right? And you go to these ecopreneurs, basically, and entrepreneurs, right? That have this depth of knowledge, that can help you and navigate wherever and meet customers where they are, effectively, right? We can't be masters of everything.
I think it's brilliant, and I think probably people don't always realize the sheer scale of it actually today. And it means that, of course, Salesforce and the Salesforce platform is being applied in ever more use cases and getting closer to the customers. And it's all around goodness. And when we talk about thousands of companies, it's a lot of jobs, it's a lot of revenue, it's a lot of careers, it's a lot of people's lives, actually.
Yeah, there's a whole ecosystem around this, and we're responsible. We, the ecosystem, is responsible for thousands of jobs. Yeah. And it's just really heartwarming, to the impact that we have, and that our ecosystem has, right?
Yeah. Now, Virginia, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, so thanks for explaining that a bit about there and explaining that to the audience. But you're now, you're running all of this internationally. It's kind of pretty impressive. Congratulations and all this.
It's a bit scary when you put it like that.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was thinking. Yeah. It's not scary. You're just a lady of your talents. But you know what? You're a successful female executive. I'd just love to know a bit more of the personal story. Where did it all start? How did you end up here? Yeah.
Well, it's really interesting, right? Because I was doing reseller stuff many years ago and stuff like that, and someone approached me from a company called Business Objects, and they were like, "Oh, there's this whole OEM thing." Didn't know what it meant. Had to look up the acronym. Found a white paper. Went for interview, and there I was, in the job, and I was like, "Oh dear, I'm going to have to learn something here." Yeah. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Right. And that was me, first of all, putting myself out of my comfort zone, right? So that's kind of the first lesson of what you do, just go for it. Yeah. And then I absolutely loved it. And then I was at Business Objects for a portion of time. Then we went to they got acquired by SAP. So I did 5 years there. And I wanted to continue my career in ISV and OEM.
Yeah.
And Salesforce had such a commitment. The first people is in to bring out this whole idea of a marketplace is in for enterprise. And so I joined running a territory. And then we signed a strategic alliance, and they needed someone to kind of figure that out, because that's what strategic alliances are. A lot of the time is figuring stuff out. And then I just kind of, went with the opportunities. Yeah. And so it was a passion for business and a passion for people. There's a couple of things that I found very different at Salesforce than before, is how approachable.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, people were really approachable when you're running an account, as in you need help and you have to ask for help. Yeah. And I was really surprised at how easy it was to go to upper management and executives and ask for help. And everybody was willing to help. Even though it wasn't their business, revenue wasn't going to them, they were really eager to help. Yeah.
That's a very good attitude. Now, you've been there for how long now?
9 years.
9 years. Oh, okay. 9 years.
9 years. 9 years. I'm showing my age now. 9 years. A decade nearly.
Decade, yeah. Fantastic. With 10 years as a surfboard, what did you get for 10 years?
No, I'm going to get 1st of December next year, or this year. No.
Have you got it yet?
No, next year.
Is it in the post next year?
Yeah, next year. 1st of December next year, I get my surfboard. Very, very excited.
Hard to believe, but I've actually got that surfboard.
I did.
And I left like 10 years ago. That's great. Now, one of the things actually, talking about a more delicate subject, actually, but it's kind of a topic of the moment. When we were originally planning this podcast, it was only just before Christmas. And we're filming this in, what is this actually? It's the end of January 2023. And the world seems to have changed, because originally, a topic you wanted to talk about, which I know you've got a big passion for, was about diversity and recruitment and employment. And I'm thinking that must have been influenced by your own personal story. But in the last few weeks, we've seen layoffs at Microsoft, Google, Amazon, even Spotify is not immune. We've seen it all over the place, and of course, Salesforce as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I'm just curious if you want to say a couple of remarks about that, and maybe how you feel about it within the ecosystem as well, and some of the behaviours you were chatting earlier about, some of the things you saw. Yeah. In a sad situation, were kind of quite human,
Yeah. I think first of all, we're all in this as an industry together, no matter how small your company is, how big your company is. I was in Israel last week, and every single one of the partners that I spoke to went through the same thing, right? Have either done it or considering it and refocusing and all the rest of it. And so it's nothing to do with the size of company. I think it's just every company is thinking about this right now in our ecosystem, in the industry, not even our ecosystem, right? Yeah, and I think we just need to be mindful that it affects everybody. Yeah. The second thing is it's on a backdrop of a really tough pandemic, couple of years, and then everything else that's kind of going around in the world, right? Yeah. There's a war in Ukraine that's just stepped up as in another notch, in the last couple of days. We are trying to figure out should we be in the office and should we be at home or where should we be? We have kids doing A-levels, for instance, that completely missed their GCSEs and they're doing exams for the very first time, or kids doing GCSEs have actually missed part of their curriculum and stuff. So I think we've just got to be aware that everybody is going through the struggle, and then there's this layered on top. I think you've just got to be open, transparent, and honest, right? Yeah. First of all, you just, it's kind of like starting with the why, right? And I think we need to be really clear and say, why this is happening, and put our hands up. And, we've had Mark Benioff come and say, we've overhired in the pandemic, right? And we hired 50% of our workforce in the pandemic. So we overhired. So I think that there's that transparency to say, I'm really sorry, this is the reality. The second thing is to know that it's not anybody's fault, so there are really good people that regrettably have been let go or are going to be let go through absolute no fault of their own, right? So I think that's the second thing. And then the third thing, we have to do what we did in the pandemic, what we did everywhere else, is say, how can we help? How do we show up? Right? How do we help?
Yeah, totally.
And I think that's, it's hard, there's no other way to describe it. It is hard. It's hard for everybody.
But one of the things I saw your organization did, because they reached out to me, was, and I've seen this with other companies as well, to be fair to them, unfortunately for the people that were being let go, there was like lists being compiled, being distributed to partners. Hey, have you got vacancies? Because a lot of people, it's a very confused situation, because it's a very weird situation where they're like, Salesforce is not unique. There's plenty of companies going through this challenge. We're seeing it everywhere.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's actually strangely also quite a lot of very selective recruitment going on, and it's like some massive game of like speed dating going on.
I know,
yeah,
it's true.
Yeah.
But it shows the resilience of our community, right? Yeah. When life throws you lemons, we make lemonade, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's that going on, and saying, okay, this is going to happen, but I have these skills, and it's going to be okay, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to kind of really take advantage of this, right?
Totally, yeah.
And I think that the markets is in the talent market had to even out a little bit, though. It was kind of spiraling a little bit out of control, in terms of prices, of being able to acquire talent and stuff like that. So I think that's a kind of a right fitting. It's great because I think that there are some fantastic organizations that are going to get amazing talent and are going to be, both sides are going to be super successful on doing it. And I think there's, we've seen it, as I say, in the pandemic, everybody has been super resilient, but there is opportunity here.
So Virginia, one of the things I wanted to draw you to, actually, what I thought was a really good point, a really human point I wanted to just chat about for a second before we talked perhaps about some other happier subjects, was one of the things that you and I both clocked on very quickly when we were chatting was what you and I, not to give away our ages, this is not our first time seeing a little bit of a downturn.
No.
Yeah. But it's been maybe 20, 30, well, the global financial crisis, 2008.
Yeah.
But something of
in
this...
our industry. And even the dot-com thing wasn't to
quite
this scale. It was kind of different.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that we were chatting about was my observation was, these are really tough decisions to make, right?
Yeah.
And you have to be a narcissist as not to be affected by any of this,
course.
right?
Yeah.
And there are CEOs that have to make really hard decisions, and it's maybe the first time that they've had to take these really tough decisions as an organization. There are people that have to make these decisions. So I know that there's a lot of people that are affected, directly impacted, that are losing their jobs. But there are also, I want to really have empathy as well as in for the people who have to take these decisions, because I don't think that's easy.
No.
Right? No one's sleeping and having a good night's sleep. And I'll be completely transparent at Salesforce, and I have seen managers that have had to keep this in, then come out with this announcement, and they've broken down in tears and feel so bad.
Yeah.
I have seen some individuals who had just been promoted into role, and this is the first thing that they have to do, and that is hard. Right? That is really, really difficult. But
it's not really something that you're prepared for. It's not like there's a training course for it. Well, there probably
exactly.
is, but it's not like everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But it's life.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's just the first time, and we have to go through it, and we have to show up.
It's
for
the slightly
everybody.
younger generation I worry about, because you've got a very mature, magnanimous kind of perspective, I think, probably because we've seen some tough times.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we've seen some things before,
But I got 2 daughters, and thankfully they're gainfully employed at the moment. but they've never seen a period of inflation or interest rate rises or job losses. This is they're ooh, okay,
Yeah, and there's we've got to remember as well, it's not just work, right? There's so much going on at home, right? The inflation rates means that mortgages have gone up, and people that have their renewals, and what are they going to do, and they have to make some decisions.
This is a really hot topic for Aforza, because the nature of what we do, helping consumer goods companies to take their products to market, those companies, as a consumer, when we see a price rise on the shelf, it just annoys us. But sometimes actually, and I see this every day with my customers, you can't underestimate how hard they work to try to price that product reasonably and make some sort of profit for their business.
I know.
Yeah, in the times of all the challenges that they're facing. It's quite impressive actually what they have to go through, to be honest. Yeah.
And that's a really good point actually that you mentioned, about profitability, right? Because if we look at our industry and look at it from that lens, right? Up to now, we've kind of been focused more or less on growth. It was like growth, but now we've seen a massive shift to profitability, right? That's what investors want to see, that's what shareholders want and stuff like that So I think that there's also that,
it's an important dynamic.
Shift. Yeah, exactly. Dynamic that's happening. And again, a great opportunity for companies and like Aforza, right? To solve that problem. So this is why I say
it might feel painful, but out of all this chaos will be opportunity, and people will win, companies will succeed.
Correct.
I'm totally convinced, and I'm a big believer that Salesforce and Mark will persevere. Completely bought into that, and we built a company on that, frankly. Right? So do it. Yeah, but we really truly believe that. And actually, it's funny because even in these challenging times, just for some of our own statistics, like we saw just recently in the last year, people using Aforza with our mobile field order capture transacted more than $1 billion worth of orders. Like, there is business taking place.
Yeah.
It is happening.
Yeah.
It might be challenging, but it's going on, and it will go on tomorrow and the day after.
It's a different way of doing business. Our priorities have changed.
Yeah.
What was kind of important, we still have to run these businesses, but we just kind of change. We have this strategy method in Salesforce, in this V2MOM, vision, values,
we
methods.
Do too, actually. Yeah.
And and I was just doing it because we're at our fiscal year end now, and I'm looking forwards and stuff. And we're kind of still waiting on things that will happen and all the rest of it. But the fundamentals of business are the same, right? We have to focus on our people, and we're now really focused on performance.
Yeah.
We have to focus on operational excellence. That was always kind of something that was kind of like further down, and that's number 2 is in for me.
Yeah.
In terms of we have to think about technology. We have to automate more. We have to, not overload people and get smarter, basically. Yeah. We have to grow. Right, grow profitably, I would say. We have to we have to continue to focus on recruiting quality partners, right? It's so important that we continue to do that. And the last method that I have is all around a thriving ecosystem. And that has always been there, and it does not change, right? That we will thrive as an ecosystem together. And I think it was heartwarming was the thing that we were discussing earlier, that it's when all of this happens, and seeing it on LinkedIn and on my leadership team today we started a whole list and we haven't even started the redundancies in EMEA, right? So we're preparing already for that so it's important we have to thrive, not survive, we can still thrive. I think that's the really important thing here.
Virginia, just one thing I'd like to ask you before we draw to a close.
Do I need a drink for this?
Yeah, and you're allowed. You've been talking too much. Yeah, it's part of the process here when we do this. You must have a drink. I've just listened to your story, listened to your thoughts. You are a real role model for female leadership in technology. I got 2 young daughters.
Who I've met and I love.
Yeah, nice girls. What advice? Because they'll probably they'll play this podcast by the way, so I'll get feedback just so you know where. But what would you give, not just for my own daughters, but for generally young women there's probably more young women in technology now than ever before. Is there anything you would give as advice just for them to start their careers?
I think the first thing that I would say is you gotta love what you do, right? And sometimes you don't know, so try it.
Yeah.
And so I didn't kind of start off saying I want to be in technology and all the rest of it. I fell into it, and if you ask anybody what they did in their education and all the rest of it and what they're doing now, it usually doesn't line up at all.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing is just be curious.
Yeah.
Be curious and try and do something, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. Sometimes I always had this motto, I used to kind of say, the only thing stopping me is me.
Right.
Because it was, right? And I still kind of try and get out of that mindset at the moment. So I think just jump in and try it. 10 times out of 10, you'll succeed. Right? That's the first thing, right? You do. And if you don't, or it didn't go the way you wanted, it'll take another time. You still succeeded because you learned something, you made, great connections. when was the last time, I shouldn't tell you because you're a serial entrepreneur, right? But
Right.
when was the last time I actually applied for a job and someone didn't come to you, right? As in, so do what you do best and enjoy it, and then kind of
Do
the
you know the
opportunity
last time I
will come.
applied for a job?
Oh, go on.
Salesforce.
Really?
Yeah, I just was thinking, like, you made me think. Yeah, I had to think, when
And
was
you
it?
were saying you've got your surfboard and it's been 10 years after that, so that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, it was.
I can
2002.
add.
Actually, 21 years now. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So it was love what you do,
Well, first of all, be brave.
be brave.
Just give it a go. The second thing is just be passionate about what you do and
Yeah.
care. And I think that's the thing. Someone
That's true.
was,
Be on a mission.
you just
I'm a big
just
believer in that.
care, right?
Yeah,
As in,
yeah.
like, just be, like, just honestly and genuinely care, and
Yeah.
just, you know. The other thing is surround yourself by good people.
Oh, big believer in that.
Like, the thing
Yeah.
is I don't work for companies, I work for people. You know, that, and I think that is, you got
Time and time again, it's been
Yeah.
proven to be a big motivator.
Yeah.
And you know what? People like us who spend so much time at work, do it with nice, talented people around you. Do you know what I mean? Your
And
friends.
The other thing that I would say, and this is more
Yeah.
kind of, I suppose, is in for leaders and you know, entrepreneurs, is I think give people a chance. I think this is the one thing, you know, we were talking about before, is in
Yeah.
the equality thing and all the rest of it, is in, and it, I just think sometimes is in that we can be like, I need someone to do something like this, and people can surprise you. So especially when you're talking about young people, right, is in just
Oh,
give
totally
a young
agree.
person a chance, right?
I see many examples of that every day. Yeah.
Last night,
I get a lot of personal pleasure out of that, actually, seeing that. Yeah.
I hired, I was having a conversation during the pandemic. One of the ladies is in who ran guest services in the front desk at Salesforce. There were a risk of redundancy. I had a job going. I was like, okay, that's not going to happen. You're going to have to just apply for this. And she, fair process, nothing to do with me. She went through the process. I was kind of at the panel stage, and it was a slam dunk. And I tell you, she'll probably be running this team in 5 years' time. So, you know, just give
Do you know
people
something,
a
just
chance.
before we finish, what I would say though is, something which I'm always very self-aware about now is people like you and I sometimes don't realise that 5-second conversation where you say to somebody, do you know, why don't you just do this, is something that unlocks something for them to just realise their potential.
Yeah.
That actually is very rewarding. Well done you. And cheers, by the way. Thanks for doing this.
No, this
See,
has
it's a lot
been so
easier-
much fun.
So much easier than you thought, right?
There you go.
Cheers. Thanks for doing this.
No,
Take care.
I'm done. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.